You know, it's funny how some elections, they almost feel routine, but
Yeah.
then there are others like this 2024 race where the stakes just feel different.
It's palpable, isn't it? It's like the entire country is holding its breath, wondering which way it'll all swing.
Yeah, man.
And you're ahead of the game. You've been digging into all the research on the 2024 election, so let's see what we can uncover together.
Okay, so first things first, you sent over a bunch of recent polls,
Yeah.
and one trend is clear. It's dead heat.
It is.
You've got to admit, in this day and age, that's basically unheard of.
It really is. And when you look closer at those swing states, particularly the ones that you highlighted in your notes, like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona,
Yeah.
they're even tighter. We're talking razor-thin margins here. That could go either way.
I can already picture those late night election maps with
Yeah.
the anchors glued to those states, wondering which way they'll flip. So help us understand, why does this election feel so different? Is it just the polls, or is there something more?
It's bigger than the polls. Think about it.
Mm.
You've got a nation grappling with some serious internal divisions on a scale we haven't seen in decades. And on top of that, the economy is, well, let's just say it's giving everyone a bit of whiplash.
It's true. I mean, just last week I was talking to, it's true. I mean, just last week I was talking to a friend, she's a teacher,
Right?
and she was saying how the rising cost of, well, everything is making it tough to even think about, buying a house.
Yeah.
And she's not alone.
Not even close. I'm seeing a lot of your own concerns reflected in the economic data you sent over. For example, you highlighted an article about, the skyrocketing cost of living in your area.
Right, right.
And when you connect those local anxieties to the national picture, inflation worries, potential recession fears,
Yeah.
you could see why the economy is shaping up to be like the defining issue of this election.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, like, it's the economy, stupid, more relevant than ever.
Pretty much. But it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
These economic anxieties are impacting people's lives in very real ways.
Right.
You mentioned your concerns about healthcare costs
Yeah.
and how those might impact your aging parents.
Yeah.
That's another major theme bubbling up in this election. The future of healthcare and Social Security.
Yeah, those are definitely things I'm thinking about, especially with, my parents getting older. It's like a double whammy of worry. How do we manage things now? And what happens down the line?
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of some pretty intense global challenges. The research you flagged on immigration policy, for example. That's a huge one.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has such a strong opinion on it.
Right.
And it's so hard to sort through all the noise.
And that's precisely why it's so important to go beyond the headlines and look at the nuances of it. What's fascinating here is how this issue plays out so differently depending on, where you live. Your research on border states versus, say, more rural communities, it tells a much more complex story.
Okay, so we've got the economy, healthcare, immigration, all these big complex issues.
Yeah.
But you know what else jumped out from your research? Climate change.
Absolutely. And this is where we see a really interesting generational divide emerging. You, for example, highlighted several articles about the urgency of addressing climate change. And that aligns with what we're seeing amongst younger voters. They're feeling the heat, so to speak, in a way that older generations might not.
Right. And it's interesting because for some people, it's not just about the environment, it's about economic opportunity too. Like, how do we create green jobs, invest in renewable energy, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have to talk about the issue of abortion. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has, without a doubt, become a major mobilizing force in this election.
Yeah. It's definitely reignited a lot of passionate debate.
Yeah.
It's definitely reignited a lot of passionate debate on both sides of the aisle. And, when you think about all these issues we've talked about, the economy, healthcare, immigration, climate change, abortion, it's no wonder this election feels so high stakes.
Yeah, it really is. It's a perfect storm, really. And let's not forget about, who's navigating this storm, the candidates themselves.
Yeah.
You've got Kamala Harris leading the Democratic charge, which is, it's uncharted territory, really, to have a woman of color as the nominee for a major party.
Historic, for sure. And then, of course, there's Donald Trump back for round two. You marked an article about how he's still wildly popular with his base, but also facing some serious pushback, even within his own party.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act for him, for sure.
Yeah.
Energizing those core supporters while also trying to appeal to, a broader electorate. And then, of course, you have these contenders that are, sort of shaking things up a bit. Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and perhaps most intriguingly, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, you flagged Kennedy's campaign in your research, and I gotta admit, I was surprised by how much traction he seems to be gaining, especially among voters who are feeling, disillusioned with the two-party system.
Yeah, he's tapping into something real there,
Yeah.
you know? That sense of frustration with the status quo.
Mhm.
His populist message, particularly on issues like healthcare reform and, corporate influence, it's resonating with a certain segment of the electorate for sure.
So we've got this fascinating mix of candidates all vying for the top job, but at the end of the day, it's not just about who they are, right? It's about who we are, the voters.
Exactly, and that's why, really understanding the Electoral College is so crucial. Remember those swing states we talked about earlier?
Right.
They hold a kind of an outsized amount of power in our system.
Yeah.
You're in listener state, which is traditionally a red-blue state, but, in this election.
Anything could happen.
Exactly. And you mentioned in your notes that, you're a little concerned about how your state's electoral votes might influence the outcome, which is a really smart thing to be thinking about. It highlights just how important every single vote can be.
Yeah, it's like your vote isn't just for a candidate, it's for like the direction of the country.
Precisely. And with an election this close, it's literally impossible to predict who will come out on top. But we can say this with certainty. This election, it isn't just a spectator sport. It's a call to action.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, as we inch closer and closer to November 2024?
Stay informed, engage in, thoughtful conversations with people, and most importantly, make your voice heard.
Your vote, your voice, they really do matter.
They do. And as you continue to, dive deeper into this election and all of its complexities, keep this in mind. Pay attention to the stories behind the headlines. Look for the human impact of the policies that are being debated.
Because at the end of the day, this election isn't just about politics, it's about people.
Exactly. It's about our hopes, our fears, and, the future that we all want to build together.
And on that note, this has been quite the deep dive into the 2024 election. But remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, stay engaged. The 2024 election is shaping up to be one for the history books, and we can't wait to see how it all unfolds.